Welcome to The Change, a podcast about the changes in life that shake, break, and make us. I'm Laura, a 45-year-old writer, podcaster, and mum who has until recently always loved change.
And I'm Cathy, a 53-year-old writer, podcaster, and mum, and change is actually my kryptonite. We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia on which this podcast is recorded and recognise the continuing connections to lands, waters and communities.
We pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and elders past and present.
Hey Laura, how you going?
Good, Cathy. How are you?
I'm well and feeling refreshed, even though my croaky voice would indicate otherwise. I'm just about from Singapore, so
fabulous
Singapore fling with my husband. So yeah, we walked like a million miles, but yeah, had an amazing trip.
It's such a great place, and it's so hilarious that we've both been there this year.
I know.
I loved it. Sweaty,
it was so much
amazing.
fun and hot.
Yes.
Hot like I can't remember being that hot ever.
No, but there's so much to see. I loved it. Loved every minute.
We had so much fun. But yes, anyway, enough about me. Tell me, who have we got on this week?
Well, this week we've got the wonderful Samantha Thomas. It's no secret she's our podcast producer and has been a podcast producer across a number of others, including Over the Back Fence, which is where we met her. She has had a long career in media and TV. She's the founder of Mynd Gym. She's a coach, a speaker, and she's a youth mentor at Samantha Thomas Coaching. And she's just a wonderful all-round human currently living in Thailand. Welcome, Samantha.
Hey Laura, how you going?
I am good, Cathy, and welcome, Samantha Thomas, our wonderful producer. We're so excited to have you as a guest on The Change.
Thank you. I cannot wait to be here. It's cool to be on the other side, like actually being on the podcast rather than just listening to it. So
I know. We've just been having a little chat off mic, I guess you could say, talking about your career in media. We actually met you through another podcast, Over the Back Fence, with Di and Nick, and we were guests on their podcast and we loved it. But that's how we met you. And you've worked in media, and you were just explaining that you've had a career in TV. Tell us about that. Tell us about where do you come from? How did you get into this game of podcasting?
I mean, I could give you the real story of now looking back with the lens of what I currently do, which is more in the mental health space of going, I see why I got into TV and media. Because actually TV for me was like my coping mechanism as a child. I actually had a lot going on in my family, and I would absolutely escape through TV. And TV and shows and films became like my safe space, and I just fell in love with the stories. It was where I processed my emotions. I really was obsessed with TV. And so then when I left school, I was like, I'm going to study film and media production, because I thought maybe I'll be a screenwriter. And I had all these dreams of like working in that industry, and like, what if my whole life was just telling stories? And I did that. And then I went on a university exchange to Canada, just because my older sister had said to me, I feel like the one thing I didn't do at uni that I wanted to do was study abroad. So go study abroad. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go. And I looked at schools in like Hollywood, because I thought, that'd be exciting. And then I thought, I feel like I'll be a bit invisible there. Like it'll be all a bit too much for me. And so I found this school in Toronto where all of the kind of Canadian big stars had gone, like Jim Carrey and Mike Myers, and like they had a really cool TV program. And so I went there to study, and this is where my life kind of took the first change, because I ended up in this room full of I was basically in this international student community, and I became such good friends with the people that I lived with there. And there were 12 of us. And I had this moment a couple of months in where I realized that me and a couple of other Australians were the only ones doing this experience in our mother tongue, in English. And everyone else I was with, they were French, they were Swedish, German, Italian. And I was like, oh my God, this is the most transformative experience for me, being in another country, away from home, studying this thing, being surrounded by new experiences. but these people are doing it in a different language. And so I promise I'm going to get to the media and TV part, by the way.
You're right. Interesting story.
I thought, I want to do that. Like, I want to do this, have this experience again of being in a completely new environment, but I want to do it in a language I don't speak. And so I finished the university exchange. I had another 6 months, one more semester left back in Sydney. So I went home. I fell into a bit of a depression, which a lot of people who've lived abroad can relate to. It's kind of like life after abroad is what I call it, where you're just like, oh my God, this entire life existed and no one back home knows what that was or who those people are. And it's a strange experience. But the whole time I was like, I'm just going to move again. And at the time I had a British passport. This was prior to Brexit. So I basically had the EU open to me. So I was like a young girl, 22, and I went, I'm going to move to Paris. So I moved to Paris with no idea, no job, no French, no clue. And I had to be an English teacher when I arrived because I literally couldn't speak the language. And I was like, oh gosh, I didn't really think about the job prospects here. So I had my little media degree and no way of communicating with people. So I started as an English teacher, and then it's like this, for me, I have these moments where the people show up in my life and I end up going exactly where I need to. So I was teaching someone who worked in HR for Radio France, and she said to me, are you a teacher? You're a very good teacher, but I get the feeling you might have studied something else. And I was like, yeah, I studied film and TV. And she said, oh, why don't you have a job in film and TV? And I said, because I don't think my French is good enough. And by then I'd been there about 10 months. And she said, speak to me in French. And I gave her a little bit of French. And she goes, I reckon you're good enough. And I said, how am I going to get an interview in French? And she said, I work for this network of HR professionals and we mentor young people and we help them get their first job. And I said, okay. And she said, send your CV here and they're going to match you with someone that will help you get a job. And they're going to try and match you with someone in the industry that you want to be in. And I was like, this sounds like a dream. Yeah. And I did that. And they matched me with a woman who worked for TF1, which is like a big, one of the biggest channels in France. And within 6 days of meeting her, I had a job.
Wow.
But this is where the story takes a turn, because the job I just fell into was in a 24-hour news channel.
Oh, wow.
So I was working in TV and it was really cool because what I'd studied in Sydney was Avid editing software, which at the time nobody knew how to use, and they happened to use it in this newsroom. So they were like, oh, we need this woman. And the channel was in English and French and Arabic all at the same time on 3 separate channels. So they actually needed people that were completely fluent in English and had good enough French. So I kind of
was
perfect.
What year was this, Sam? What are we talking
2006. So almost 20 years ago, which is so incredible to think. So again, I had a lot of things kind of work in my favor, but that meant that this dream, I guess my initial thing of getting into TV to tell stories and be creative became, I was suddenly in the world of news and journalism, and I had a press card and I was working the 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. I fell into a type of working that completely ruined my physical and mental well-being, which has a lot to do with what I now do in my life. But at the time, I must admit, it wasn't all doom and gloom. I loved the newsroom. I loved being in that environment. It was super fast-paced, exciting. There was 35 nationalities in that newsroom. And it, I was kind of still on Australian time by doing the night shift. And so I finished my shift and called my mum and then sleep in the day. And by lunchtime I was up and I was able to enjoy Paris as if I wasn't at work because I had all this free time, and my press card gave me free access to like every museum, every gallery, every exhibition. It was a bit of a dream in that way. But yeah.
And there was a lot happening in the world. Like if I think back to 2006, there was still quite a lot happening. We're just 5 years post 2001, September 11.
It's a huge part of it, Cathy. So
so there was still a lot, like, because what if we've just had the anniversary of the London bombings? So
2005.
So there was still I mean, there's always a lot happening in the world. It doesn't matter, big events, small events, there's still a lot happening. But in the early 2000s, there was a lot going on in a newsroom, I imagine, not just the mundane,
Oh, no.
shoplifter or things like that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that actually was a key part of me realizing that something wasn't right with me being there. And by that, I mean the time zone that I was working. I mean, I got to do cool things, right? So I was involved with the team that covered the Obama election. I was on that team because it was that time of night when it was happening. And so I covered some really cool things. However, what happened was 5:30 a.m., 6 a.m. Paris time, which was the end of my shift, was 8:30, 9 a.m. time in Afghanistan. And at the time, there were suicide bombs going off most days, and it was done at that time because it was peak hour traffic. And I got to the point where I was so desensitized, I could feel myself going, can I just wait like 30 minutes till I'm home before they let off this bomb?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And I felt myself say that, and I thought, what has this done, like, to me as a human, that having edited images nonstop that are, I think it's very different now with social media. That's the other thing that happened whilst I worked in news. I was there for the start of Twitter, and it was Twitter that changed the face of news because suddenly people were getting instant updates, and the amount of source checking, fact checking, things that used to go on in a newsroom, we were kind of trying to keep up with this immediate Twitter news. But all that to say, I guess I was seeing images and we were selecting the ones that were okay to broadcast on TV. And so that meant that there were a lot that I was seeing that was not okay for human consumption, but I had to consume it. And people in newsrooms have to see it. Yeah. And I think I saw it so much that by the end of it, I was just like, oh, like it was like I heard myself say that and I went, what am I thinking about human life that I'm just feeling like I don't want to deal with having to edit that for my shift? It was a real moment of what is going on. Like, this is not okay for your mental health and the way that you see the world if you are thinking of human beings in that way,
Yeah, it would be devastating. And, just working, as you say, in all that horror day in, day out. And when you're so young as well. So how long were you there for, Sam?
I was there for 4 years. So, and it was around that time that I was starting to feel like, I don't know if a newsroom is good for me. That, again, it's like these moments. The newsroom where I worked happened to merge with another, like a big radio station in France. And in France, when you're a journalist, if companies merge, they allow you to take basically a voluntary redundancy because there's a lot of people who might choose to work for a particular network who don't want to work for a different network. And so I was like, oh, this is kind of perfect because I feel like this chapter of my life is coming to a close, and so I can kind of get out and figure out what was next. And I was missing my family. And so, yeah, I tried to make New York the next move, but I just couldn't get a visa to go there. And then a family member was actually diagnosed with cancer. And so I came home and then started like the next chapter. So, yeah.
Gosh. So your first change.
Yeah.
So, yeah, at a young age. And it's funny because all the things that you talked about, they're all the things that I dreamed of doing, but was never bold enough and brave enough to do. I wanted to, and I look at Laura as well. And, she moved from the UK, and I know you came on a backpacking holiday.
Yeah,
you weren't
I
meant to
speak English.
stay. But yeah, I was never bold enough and brave enough to do those things. So what came next?
Then it came with again another bout of kind of what I would call like situational depression, in that I was really struggling with, again, this experience of repatriation, of being back in my home, no longer feeling at home in Australia, feeling very foreign, missing my life in France, but being very aware of the fact that I had made that choice and wanted to be in Australia. And I think I thought, I've had 4 years in this international newsroom and I did it in French, so it'll be so easy for me to get a job doing this in Australia. And nobody in Australia cared about my experience. They didn't know the channel. It was nonsense to them that I spoke
Bizarre.
French. Like, who cares? So I felt like, oh, wow, that entire experience, it felt like it was invisible and it was so deeply meaningful to me. And no one would give me an interview even. And I was like, what on earth? Like, again, I was
Yeah,
kind
I'm
of like,
shocked. That seems like an amazing skill set to
I
me.
know, you would have thought, Laura, but no. And so I kind of, again, it was like, who do you know? And I reached out to people, and someone that worked at Channel 9 who knew me kind of gave my CV or resume for some kind of a job. And I'd applied for that job before with the same resume, the same application letter, but it had not been looked at. And then when it was passed on from someone within the company, they brought me in to be a segment producer on Mornings with Kerry Ann at the time.
Oh,
Wow.
So pretty different to like international news, right? But I was just like, I'll take anything I can get in Australia. But I was a freelancer. But they brought me in for like a day's work experience. And I was like, okay, sure. I'll do a day's work experience. And at the end of that day, they were like, oh, this has been really great. You've done some great work. Can you come back in tomorrow and do this? And I said, what do you mean, like for free? And they said, yeah, it's, we just want to see your skills. And I was thinking, I just saw them for a whole day. But I agreed to it. And again, I was like 26, I think, at the time. I was still quite young. I did it for a week. So I did 5 days. And then at the end of that week, they asked me to come back the following week. And I said, for a paid job. And they said, no, like work experience. And I said, absolutely not. I have 4 years in an international newsroom in a language that's not even my own. And you've just seen that I've produced more segments in this 1 week than half of your segment producers that you're paying. So I'm not coming back. And they were like,
how bizarre.
okay.
Yeah.
Really strange. And then a couple of months later, they contacted me and they said, would you come back on a freelance basis, paid? And I said, yep. And I started freelancing for Nine. I worked on the Today Show and Mornings with Kerry Ann. And then I was working as a freelance for the Weather Channel at Foxtel. I was just trying to take what I could get to, I guess, start my TV career again in Australia. But that only lasted a few years. And then I was like, what am I doing? Like this world of TV is not for me. So.
And yeah, why? It sounds so glamorous, doesn't it? And I think Cathy and I would probably relate a little, having worked in media and well, I'm speaking personally, I found it challenging for sure at times. What do you think were the hardest parts for you?
Yeah, I think in the end, like the next permanent role that I took was with the Weather Channel. And that was, I really loved working there. I loved the people that worked there, but I was on 4 a.m. to midday, 5 days a week, getting up at 2:30 in the morning. So my big wake-up call, first of all, I was very physically unwell. I didn't know. I now know what was happening. But I completely destroyed my hormones. My period stopped for 5 years. I was very overweight. I had a lot of inflammation in my body. Mentally, I was not well because I was not sleeping. I was very lucky in France. They have incredible employee rights. And because I worked the night shift, I was full-time and they gave me 205 days off a year. So I did one 2-day week, 2 3-day weeks, and 1 4-day week, because they deemed that medically that was the equivalent.
That's incredible.
Right? So it's incredible. I had medical checkups paid for by the news channel every 6 months. I had a driver. When I look at it, I was living in a dream world, right? And I came to Australia and they said, no, you're on the Journalist Award. And I was like, right, what does that mean? And they were basically like, you're on Sunday to Thursday, 4 a.m. to midday. And I said, oh, is that like 40 hours, but like starting at 4 a.m. is there any more time off? And they were like, no. And I said, what do I do? I don't have a car. And they were like, well, you'll have to get a car, because there was no public transport at that time. And I said, but like, do I get more for working a Sunday? And they said, no. And it was like this real, and I said, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And they were like, there's plenty of other
So
people.
there was no penalty rates for Sundays?
No, just like a sort of shift pattern. Wow.
Yeah. So I did that. I got exhausted. I negotiated a hard-fought 4-day week later on in my career. And I said, I'll take a 20% pay cut. It's not even about the money. I just can't do this 5 days a week. I cannot get up at this time. I'm so unwell. They said, no, I quit. And then because I quit, like I called their bluff, 2 days later, they said, okay, you can work 4 days a week. So I was trying, but it was physically and mentally draining. And then I thought, maybe if I get to like creative TV, that's the issue. And so I actually worked my way out. I was working 4 a.m. to midday, and then I was a production secretary from 12:30 to 7 p.m. on A Place to Call Home for Channel 7. So I was like, okay, now I'm transitioning to like creative TV and slight more normal hours. And I ended up getting a beautiful job on a show called Red Fern Now, which I really liked. And I liked all of the production team. I loved the actors. They were really wonderful. I loved the writing staff. And it was so good because I had that moment and I was like, wow, even this, it's not really like it still felt a bit stressful, long hours, not purposeful enough. And also mainly what happened was at the end of that shoot, I can't remember if it was 8 weeks or 12 weeks, but it was a season. And I watched a woman who was my mentor, who was at the time, she was 45 and I would have been 30. And I was having a conversation with her and she was like, oh, I don't know what's going to be next. I've got to and she was very stressed about what her next job would be. And she said, maybe I'll have to take a commercial. And I could see her going around in her head about what her next thing would be. This woman was very good at her job. It's the only job she'd ever done. She'd been in the industry for 25 years. She knew everyone in the industry. She'd worked on every big Australian film, every Baz Luhrmann film. She'd worked on Russell Crowe films. She'd worked in reality TV, all of the TV. And it was a mirror moment where I went, this is my future. Like, there is no security in creative television here in Australia. There just isn't. There's not enough jobs. There's not enough work. And I don't want to live like that. So that was like my...
Is it because it's contract based too? So it's not like, or is it people go from show to show? That's my sort of understanding.
Contract based, and I guess there's a lot of people that want to do it, and there's not actually that many shows being made. I don't know if it's also the timing. Like in 1996, John Howard at the time signed an agreement. I don't know what it was called, but basically with the US, which meant that a lot of the rules that Australia had around the amount of content that would be made locally in Australia went out the window. And it became cheaper for the networks. Again, now streaming has changed everything. But back then it was like we just started buying shows from America that we never used to do prior to that. There used to be like a real rule about how much would be made here. And by the time I was in that industry in the 2000s, that rule was gone. So it was, again, cheaper for a network to buy a show from overseas than to get it made in Australia.
And not only that, that's what has changed the reality TV space as well, because it's cheaper to make reality TV, even though there's a certain element of scriptedness to reality TV. We know that. We're all like, it's not really reality TV in the same way as it used to be. Once upon a time, it was chuck a camera on somebody and follow them around, and then they would edit that down and either try to make them look as stupid or as funny or whatever. And I can remember, talking about that. I can remember a million years ago, I think it was Newlyweds, like with Nick Lachey and
Jessica Simpson.
Simpson. And I can remember seeing this scene where she was like, what does tuna taste like?
Oh, that's the chicken of the sea.
Chicken of the sea or whatever. Right? And they were all just laughing their heads off at her, like as though she was the most stupid person in the entire world. And at the time I had Zach, I think, was about 4 and the twins were about between 6 months and a year old or something. And I can remember getting into the car, and it was a summer day because I had my thongs on. And I got in the car, kids were in the car. I've gotten into the car and got to the shops, and I only had one thong on my foot. Like, as I've jumped into the car, the other thong has fallen off, and I've not realised until I got to the shops and went out. And then I've driven back home and there's my thong sitting in the driveway. So flip-flops for anyone who's not from Australia listening.
Got it.
Not underwear.
Yeah.
And I can just remember that was around the same time as that episode, and everyone thinking she was the most stupid person in the world. And I was like, you know what? If they put a camera on me 24/7, followed me around, and then edited that down to 30 minutes, I'm going to look like the most stupid person in the whole entire world. So, yeah, reality TV has also changed that landscape a lot, right? Because it's cheaper to do that than it is to have story writers and showrunners and all of the
Nation
things
scouts,
that are
art
required
directors.
for an actual show. And now when you think about it, that makes sense as to why back before, our favourite shows used to have 22 episodes, and now we might get 10, if we're lucky. We get a 10 episode, and that seems to be a long show run, and then they start again and you get 10, and it's like 10 doesn't feel enough, but it makes sense because it's cheaper to fill everything with reality TV.
There's a reason why we lose so many actors, to the States. I don't believe it's that they all want a fame hungry and want to be these celebrities, and it's that they want work, and that's where the creative work has always been, so.
Yeah. And it just feels like that with media in general. Everything has got cut and the budgets have gone out of it. And, I don't know when the glory days were, maybe the 80s, early 90s or something, but it just feels like everything's been shaved back and And, when you do see good TV though, you really appreciate it, don't you? Because you understand.
Love it. Yeah.
Good TV is still really good. And there's definitely with the streaming services there are good shows about. But so following that period of time, and you had pretty long career in media then.
Yeah,
really
decade.
overall. Yeah.
And then I went back to it here and there as a freelancer. Yeah,
that's it. You've a good amount of time.
Yeah.
But what were the sort of main lessons from it, about yourself too, right? So you've gone into a whole new career.
Yeah. Gosh, what did I take from media? I mean, it's funny because my whole new career was actually what I have found is that what I now do, I'm a coach, like I'm a life coach, but I also have a mental fitness gym. So I'm very passionate about helping people with what I want to kind of reframe as mental and emotional fitness, so that people can kind of work on it every day. But the way that I got into that was I was so unwell after my experience in media that I went to a health coach, and I thought this health coach would give me, a nutrition plan and an exercise plan, and I would lose weight and my life would be fine. Because also, I'm not going to go into it, but embedded in all of that was a severe, I had so very poor body image, a real issue with my body, with self-loathing. I had an eating disorder. And working in TV did not help that, because what we were seeing, particularly in those days, again, now we have all different body shapes and sizes being represented, but there was no representation of that. So I constantly felt probably much bigger than I was. Like I had body dysmorphia, I'm sure, because I was working with people that were presenters and actors and on TV and tiny, and I felt always big in my body. And then I was unwell, right? I had this 24-hour news cycle that meant that my body was not coping. And so I went to this health coach to try and lose weight. I thought that was the, key to all my problems. And she basically said, the issue isn't your nutrition or your exercise. The issue is that you have a body image issue and you don't like yourself. And I'm saying it like this because I was so cynical at the time. And I was like, yeah, of course I have a body image issue because I look like this. I was so not okay in my skin. And anyway, I worked with her for 3 months on mindset, what I now know to be mindset. And she changed my life so much, or changed the way that I saw myself in such a short period of time, that I was like, I don't know what that woman just did, but I want to learn what that was. So I studied coaching, not to be a coach. I just studied it to understand what on earth went on in my head, that suddenly the entire way that I experience myself and my life is different. And then it was like I learned about positive psychology, coaching. I loved it. And I realized that the thing that I was good at in the newsroom which like I was a producer with, you know, talking to someone in their earpiece in a live newsroom situation. So I'm in the studio talking to them, and people used to constantly say to me, "You are so calm in like such a chaotic environment, and you're my favorite producer." Not because I had any editorial, like, I wasn't this superstar journalist that even knew the most about what was going on in the world. My general knowledge was probably one of the lowest in the newsroom. But what I knew was that what comes across in that person in a live broadcast is entirely based on how they feel. And all I was doing as a producer was making that presenter feel completely safe, completely confident, believe in themselves, feel calm, know that I had their back, bring their nervous system down into a regulated state. Like, it's so funny because I think what I was doing there is so much of what I do in my coaching and my speaking now. And that was like my secret sauce. I didn't even know what the news story was, but I was like, they will be able to communicate things if they feel safe. And when I watch live TV, I know if the producer is stressed because you can see it. I can see it very often in a presenter's face when something is said in the earpiece. And I'm like, and you can get a sense of like, oh, that poor person, like their producer is like losing the plot right now. And they're trying to keep it together. And they're the ones that look like they, you know, don't know what they're talking about or whatever might be happening. So it's funny. I kind of really fell into the world of coaching just through having had this transformational experience. Like, talk about change. I was thinking, I'm actually in the business of change. My whole life is about supporting people to make a change. That's literally what coaching is. And I'm like, that's so cool. Like, because I deeply believe that no matter where you are, what's happening in your life, how low things may have gotten for you, again, with my own mental health, I know that like exceptional, extraordinary change is possible always. And I know that it takes work and I know that it takes support. But I believe if you have the right support, if you have people in your corner, if you can set up the environment in the way that supports you and know yourself, I really believe that anything is possible. I'm a deeply optimistic, hopeful person. And that's also what I felt was being removed from me in the newsroom. I was like, I want to see the world in doom and gloom. I want to continue to see the best in people, to know that most people are wonderful. They're kind, they're generous. We don't see that. We see so much of the negative. And I think if we saw ourselves in a better light, we'd make different choices. We'd take different actions. We'd live a life that we love. But we're so used to like finding the bad in ourselves. And I think so much of the media is responsible for that. It teaches us, find the shit and focus on it. And I fundamentally, like when I go, what did I learn in media? I'm like, I learned to live the opposite way.
Yeah, I mean, clickbait, rage baiting, all that stuff, the media do it so well, and we know it when you've seen it from the other side, how the sausage is made. But a lot of people don't realize that that's what's happening a lot of the time when they open their phones or open the front page of the Daily Mail. It's designed to get you in, and it's bad.
And Laura, you alluded to it earlier, you know, having been on the other side of the sausage factory and how the sausage is made. While it was incredible and it was an experience that I'll be forever grateful that I had. And, you know, it led me to meeting some of the most incredible people that I've met in my life. But understanding how it works and understanding that the happy stories rarely are the stories that people want to see. Like, I know we think that's what we want. And I've seen, I think it's Channel 7, they're running out like, you know, the bright side or something at the each end of it, the news segment or something. I can't remember exactly. I guess to try and end the news on a happy note, right? But having written happy stories, no one cares. No one reads the happy stories. Everyone reads the stories that are, you know, crappy, telling people that you feel invisible or that your life has turned to shit, or, you know, you discovered that your ex-husband is, a drug dealer or whatever the latest. Oh no, that was one story I read recently.
Yeah.
But like whatever the story, if it's turned into a negative, then there's more chance that people will click, more people will read it, you'll get more eyeballs on it, and the more rage baity the headline is, irrelevant of what the context of the story is, then you're going to get more comments, and that's how the algorithm works, unfortunately. And
I think there is a movement away from it too, right? Because now that we're having these sorts of chats, and a lot of people are going a little deeper into why they feel bad, or trying to work out all the things about their own mental health, or what the damage that the media has done, maybe for some people. Hopefully, even if you don't click on the happy stories, you might not click on the bad ones, which will then, numbers make the media. So if those numbers start dropping generally, I think it's because people are looking for something else, whether they just don't want to look at the news at all, they want to be with people in real life at events, or going out for walks, talking to their life coach like Sam, or just friends for coffee.
I mean, I follow all those
Yeah.
like news movement, and there
Oh, me
are
too. Yeah.
like that. And I just want to say I have deep respect for journalists. I think there are a lot of good people doing a lot of good
Yes,
work.
there
I
are.
think
That's
so many
true.
of them are like really about trying to tell truthful, genuine stories and raise awareness, and we need that work in the world. So even though it wasn't for me, and that it didn't work for me and how I wanted to experience my life, I feel like I don't want to crap all over news media, because there's some very incredible people doing such important work. So
Yeah.
And we need to hear it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's right.
unfortunately, it's not all sunshine and roses out there, and we need to hear that too, right?
Yeah, they do a job, and it's an important one. And I think absolutely, yes, rage clicking is a thing, but at the same time, the news, like what's going on in Gaza and what's going on all over the world, we do, like you say, we need to know. It's as awful as it is, we do need to know, and we need to be made aware of it. And there are people, like you say, Sam, doing great work out there. And you're in Thailand. Tell us about that before we need to wrap it up and let you go back to your poolside. Why?
One thing, so this is leading us, I guess, into the next change.
The next change. So the next big change. So when I studied coaching in 2014, and in 2015, through the coaching school where I studied, there just happened to be someone else in the class that I studied in who was living in a wellness retreat in Phuket. And she put a note in our little Facebook group going, does anyone want to come to Phuket for 3 months and be a coaching intern? You won't be paid, but you can live here for free, have all the food, literally live in a wellness retreat. I was like, yes, because I was still very unwell. And again, a big part of me healing my body was understanding what was even going on in my body, which didn't happen until I got to Phuket. And I met these incredible people who were in this industry and helped me understand my hormones and everything that was going on. So yeah, I just came for 3 months, in inverted commas, because I loved it. I ended up staying until COVID. So almost 5 years I lived in a I didn't live the whole time in a wellness retreat. I did end up setting up my own business here and having my own villa, but I was essentially living in a wellness retreat. I was working in one for the entire time. I mean, what a dream existence, right? From a newsroom to I would wake up, ride my bike to the beach, have sunrise at the beach, go on a walk, coach someone, go meditate, get in a nice bath, then jump in a sauna, then have a massage. Like it was crazy. And then COVID was the change that ripped me from that world. And I was like, oh my God, what is my life? But so now I am, thankfully, I kept doing all the work that I did. So I still do all of the speaking that I used to do in Phuket. And I would be flown to Hong Kong and Singapore. People would see me at the wellness retreat and then say, can you come speak in my company? So I had this great little speaking business. I kept that up during COVID years over Zoom, which was great, but annoying because I want to be in the room with people. But I was very grateful that I still had the work. So I still do wellbeing talks. I still coach people, but it was all on Zoom because that's what happened in COVID, right? Everything went online. And so part of me being here now is that I missed the in-person, being in a room, saying the same thing, but having like real people there whose energy I could feel. I miss that in my coaching. So I'm very lucky in that because I have all of these things that I can do online, like produce this podcast and run my online mental fitness gym and do my coaching. I can do all of that from here, but I can also be back. So I'm back living in a wellness retreat. So I just have like delicious, like healthy meals and incredible people. And I get to do these workshops, and I'm coaching today, like in about an hour, I'll be doing a one-on-one session in person. And it's just bringing me back to life because I need I'm an extrovert as well. So COVID for me was a challenging time because I'm a single woman and I was living alone. And I think it was the lack of connection that, again, I went into that was probably my longest bout of depression. But this is like, I definitely started coming out of it in 2023, 2024. And I just feel like very happy with where I'm at and grateful to be here I'm just here for 2 months, and then I'll come back and feel a bit rejuvenated.
Sounds
and
incredible.
Yeah.
What a life.
So jealous.
I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah. But happy for you. Yeah. It sounds amazing.
I can barely think about taking a night away from my family for myself, let alone, packing.
I think about it all the time.
Oh, no, I think about it all the time, but I think Zach turns 24 this year, and I think in our entire marriage, in January next year, Andrew and I will have been married 25 years, but I think in our entire marriage we've probably been apart like maybe a handful, like 5 nights off that have not been work related or I've not been in a hospital.
Oh my God.
Yeah. In 5 years. In 25 years. Yeah. It's really hard. My husband, and love him to death. I love you, Andrew. And we've just had an amazing holiday together. And a lot of people think that I'm incredibly selfish, but I actually can't. I struggle to put myself at the top of that list. I would implore everybody else in the world to make sure they put themselves first and, put their own oxygen mask on and all of the things. And I'm just terrible at doing it for myself. And that's why I end up in burnout. And I know it. But yeah, it's so I'm not envious in that. What I'm really envious of is people like you who can prioritize their well-being and know how important that is.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it is. And my compassion goes to all of the people that have so many more responsibilities than I do, right? And I'm very aware of I've made a conscious choice to live in this way and to not have children, and I'm happy with that choice. And I know it's a lot harder to prioritize well-being when you have all of these people that are very dependent on you, and I think that's not to say that you can't completely kind of, again, come into this next chapter of wherever you're at, Cathy, and make whatever changes you need to so that you can put yourself first. But I do think sometimes now there's this pressure on women to do that, when actually there are seasons of your life when you are a mum of younger children, particularly, where that's not reality. You actually are putting your children first. And I think the compassionate thing to do is to be actually this season of my life, unfortunately, is for these other humans. But that doesn't mean, obviously, as they get older and, you can put yourself first. But
it's your turn.
I think that's the thing though, right? We don't take that compassion on ourselves and accept that this is a season of our lives, and we all go into different seasons. And I think when we spoke to the thing that has been really sticking in my mind since we spoke to Dr. Khan. Remember when we spoke to Dr. Fatima Khan, she mentioned that women are stuck between feminism and capitalism because where feminism is to tell us to do it all, to have the career and to have the family and make all the choices. That's what feminism is all about, having the choice. Capitalism actually tells us we have to work to pay for all of those things, and we're really stuck. And you know, it's an interesting, when she said that, it really that really hit home for me. It was like, oh, that is actually really poignant, you know, being stuck in between that world. You know, what is it? Work like you don't have children, and have a family like you don't have a job.
It's hard.
And I think that
Yeah.
makes it easier to tap into the compassion piece. Like for me, I think one of the things that is, maybe it can be good and bad, is that I think women, all genders, but particularly women, make themselves wrong for the things that are difficult in their life. Like, oh, I should be better at, you know, putting myself first or whatever. And I fundamentally think that we are living with some incredibly flawed systems. I always my default is like, have compassion for the human, because this way of living and working that's causing burnout, they didn't make that up. They're trying to exist in a fundamentally flawed system. And I do hope that we can come up with other systems and other ways of figuring out work and life, because I never think it's the individual's fault. I understand, you know, we need to take accountability and do what we can, but I also think, you know, women have made themselves feel so bad for like whatever is going on in their life. And it's like, absolutely not. Whether it's feminism, capitalism, all of these, like, we have been absolutely socialized in these ways that aren't helpful for us. And so I have compassion for anyone surviving, really. Like, well done to all of us.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, indeed. Life is hard, and whichever your path, there's always going to be challenges, whether you have kids, don't have kids, you know, whatever that may be. Have a partner, don't have a partner. It's all many challenges to whatever the outcome, whether it's choice or not choice. Yeah, and I guess we'll bring it to the last question, Sam. We've kept you for ages, and it's been such a lovely chat. But this podcast is all about the change, and you've had many. But the change, when we talk about it in terms of perimenopause or menopause, we're being a bit cheeky, but wondering, you're still pretty young. What's your feeling or thoughts about coming into perimenopause? How are you approaching it all?
A couple of main things. I was thinking about this because the fascinating thing is, right, I'm 41, I'll be 42 in a couple of months. So I'm not in perimenopause yet. However, going back to my burnout, what happened to my hormones, I had 5 years without a period. Now, when you're that age, they call it amenorrhea. But as you both know, the definition of menopause is 12 months without a period. So I actually went through menopause at the age of 28. And part of me understanding everything that I did, like, so I have experienced the change. I experienced all kinds of physical issues, and potentially now I can look at some of the things that were happening in my mood as being absolutely related to me having no progesterone in my body, all kinds of things. So again, I didn't know at the time, but I remember this moment in 2015 here in Phuket where the clinical nutritionist who'd taken my bloods, he said to me, just so you know, you have the hormone profile of a woman in her 70s. And at the time, I think I was 32. And he said, so your body thinks you have already been through menopause. So I guess I have kind of experienced in that way. I'm very lucky that because I was young, I had the right support. I had people here that were kind of ahead of the game. My body I had to take what is now, you know, what we'd call HRT. I took bioidentical hormones, but at the age of 32. And because my body wasn't supposed to have stopped making those, the idea was that if I took them, my body would start producing them again. And it did. So I'm very, very lucky. I've had wonderful kind of hormonal health for about 7 years now. So I guess my thoughts on it are, like, generally, I'm just so grateful about how much we know about this now in the last 5 years, because I struggled so much physically and mentally, and I went to GP after GP after GP in Australia to understand what was going on, why I didn't have a period. And they kept just saying to me, it was probably because you took the pill for a while, and we can give you a pill to induce your period if you want it, but if you don't want to have kids, why would you want your period? There was no endocrinologist. I kept saying to them, but why did it stop? No one taught me about cortisol, anything, right? So anyway, this is a very long answer to say, I think we've come so, like such a long way. We have so much more education. So even though I know that I might experience some of the difficulty that I did experience back when I went through menopause in my 20s, I feel much more equipped. And I have all of the people and the support I need, I think, to be able to get through that phase in a much more positive way.
Fabulous. Well,
Perfect.
yes, hopefully, and you will. You've got all that set up, and and you can get to Phuket and just go through it that way, because I think
Exactly.
I want to come and join you.
Just pack up your life and come to Phuket, ladies. You're welcome.
Yeah. Oh my God, it sounds amazing. Sam, thank you so much for chatting to us and giving us massive Thailand envy. But yeah, so fascinating to hear all your stories of change.
Thanks, ladies. It's been the best.
Wow. Oh gosh, makes me want to pack up and move to Phuket. I don't know about you.
Oh my God. Yes, it sounds amazing. Living in a wellness retreat is just like on my goal list for 2026.
Mine too. I'm not sure how it works out with the family for
No.
me, but
No.
yeah.
I know, but I think Sam's journey's obviously been, she's had a career a little, equivalent to ours in some ways, that media experience and finding it very challenging, which we, obviously spoke about a lot. Media is a challenging industry to work in, but she's had some incredible experience. Imagine just going to Paris and just turning up and working in another language. Love that. What a brave, bold move.
Oh, I know. I always look at people who do brave and bold things and just think, I mean, I still have a chance to do brave and bold things, but I think now I have extra commitments. So, I can't just pack up my life and move to France for a year or, although I did read that book, Mrs. Winterbottom Takes a Gap Year. And I do think that, taking a gap year or even a gap month would be a whole lot of fun. But yeah, she's absolutely inspirational and incredible. I think Sam coming into our lives when we needed a podcast producer was, I don't know, serendipitous. And
it was.
She's got a little bit to teach us.
I think so. And what she said about being calm, I can hear that in her voice. She's got a fabulous voice. Really just wasted behind the scenes as a producer. She should be on the microphone every week because she's wonderful. But no, she's a brilliant producer, and that calm and measured approach has obviously seen her through, a career in media and now as a career coaching and mentoring people around the world, and to her new life in Thailand. And she's a great guest and someone. I think it's also really interesting to speak to women who are having very different paths and journeys to us. So, no kids, living overseas, such a joy, isn't it, to hear from someone doing something so differently. And I love that as women living now in 2025, these are choices available, and that young women should look at and go, these are choices that are available to me too.
Absolutely. And I also love that, Sam, she doesn't gloss over that there were hard times in there as well.
That's right.
And I don't love that she had hard times. I think that sometimes it's easy to look at stories of people doing incredible things or living in wellness retreats, or that they are really I don't know, it comes easily, but I don't think it came easily. I think it's something that she worked hard for, and she doesn't gloss over that.
Yeah, I think that's important. Yeah, every path has its its ups and downs, whatever path you choose, and it's good to have Sam show those vulnerabilities, and she's so authentic and tells a great story. Yeah, she's
sure does.
Yeah, she's awesome guest. Thank you, Sam.
Sam.
Thanks for listening to The Change, a fully independent podcast. Whether you're seeking inspiration, curious about change, or just here for the great banter, we'd love you to make The Change your new go-to podcast.
And even better, send us your voice notes or questions about change. We'll use them on the show. Email us at changepod2023@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at @the_change_pod. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram for more on the change.
Bye.